It is Thursday night, so it's of course time for Biscuits and SEC's Week 11. I can't believe it's Week 11 already. College football preview. We'll be talking about the Ole Miss and Georgia game, which is the big game across the conference this weekend. We'll talk Tennessee, Mizzou, which I do think some horse trading happened with that, ended up on CBS. And I think Bama and Kentucky is at least worth a mention. And we'll continue to talk about the storyline that is Michigan, and they've got a mess and a civil war and everything else happening in the Big Ten right now. But Alex, man, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, Steven, man. It's good to be back. Yeah, I'm with you, man. Week 11. I cannot believe we're here. You blink and it's gone, but there's still a lot of football left to play, and it's going to be a fun stretch run.
Should be absolutely. Ole Miss is going to Georgia. Ole Miss is in the all whites. They're wearing the same thing that they wore against Georgia Tech. So it's the red helmets. It's really red and white. Athens, Georgia is going to be very red and white come this weekend. But you have a loose-sounding Lane Kiffin. They're making a point to where the mistakes that he's made at Alabama doesn't necessarily happen. Jackson Dart obviously has to have a massive game whenever you play against a team like this. Trey Harris, the stars have to be the stars, and the defense has to play pretty well. What's your read on this game?
I think it's going to be very tough for Ole Miss to go in there to Athens and get a win. I mean, to state the obvious, it's extremely tough to win there. I think they haven't lost in a couple of years there, maybe since COVID, I want to say.
2019,
yeah, it's been forever. So it's going to be very difficult, as Lane Kiffin has been saying all week. You know, he's been preaching that they've got a monumental task ahead of them. I think in this one, really, hey, first of all, Trey Harris, what an incredible game. We were talking before the show, about the game that he had against A&M, and he's just really come on. I think he could be an X factor in this game. That may be stating the obvious, but folks may have to remember as well that he didn't play against Alabama in that game, where the offense kind of struggled there in the second half. So maybe he can be a catalyst and provide some more support on the outside for Jackson Dart in a massive game. And they're going to need everybody. They're going to need all hands on deck in order to get it done. Another thing is that, as you mentioned, Ole Miss's defense is going to have to play really well in this one. Ole Miss has been good, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're +8 in turnover margin this year. So they've been getting the ball on turnovers this year, which is great, and it's been helpful to the offense to score points and kind of flip the field and flip the scoreboard. They're going to have to do that this week, and the tough part about that is that Georgia does not turn the ball over. They are very good at protecting the ball. Carson Beck does a great job protecting the ball. They rarely fumble. So Ole Miss is going to have to, on defense, I believe, get a turnover, maybe two, in order to win this game, and then on the other side, they're going to have to protect the ball. Jackson Dart has been decent this year, I think, in protecting the ball for the most part, especially better than last year for sure. But no doubt about it, they're going to have to be good at protecting the ball on Saturday in order to get a win.
An interesting thing to me, and this is the way I think that Ole Miss pulls out the win. This is Georgia's a 10-point favorite on FanDuel. It's going to be monumental playing the game at night, because we always talk about 2019 was the last home loss. The last home night loss is actually even before then. And I haven't looked it up, but I just know it is before them. But this is the way that I think Ole Miss wins this game. They need to get first downs and get their tempo going. Kirby Smart has to match up his front seven, because he has a defensive end that is really good against the run, and he has one that's pretty good against the pass, but they're not good on the other way. Now, if Ole Miss doesn't get first downs, that doesn't matter. They can change and do whatever they need to do. But if Ole Miss gets first downs and catches them with one of them on the field, they can take advantage of it. And then whenever you have the tempo with a new middle linebacker, because Georgia's starting middle linebacker, an All-American, broke his arm against Missouri, he's not going to play. So play tempo, and that's a way that probably some busts and explosives can happen. The defensive side of the football, they just kind of need to bow up, and they need to get after Carson Beck, try to get him to drop his eyes, try to get him off of his spot, and hopefully you can get off the field on third down, because right now Georgia's at a 59 or 55% conversion on third down by their offense. That's good for fourth in the country. Their defense, hey, it's only 26th. percent, and that's get the third in the conference. So if it comes down to third down, Ole Miss could be in trouble. Ole Miss is going to need to have success on the early downs, but I think that is the blueprint for Ole Miss wins. And it also looks like a 50 to 70% chance of rain. Some wet stuff is probably going to fall from the sky that night. And I think there have been many streaks. There have been many streaks. And if you look behind me, you know what's going to come here. But there have been many streaks that have been broken up by weather playing a role. And if it rains, I think it benefits Ole Miss. If it's close towards the end of the game and Georgia starts thinking about all of their goals and all of these things that could go away, I think they could tighten up a little bit. I think that is the path.
You laid it out. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. The tough part that I see for Ole Miss, I don't know if I agree with you on the weather benefiting Ole Miss necessarily. I think it could. I mean, Ole Miss is a fantastic running team, as we all know. But Georgia has been the premier running team in this conference for a while now. It's been them and Alabama really running the ball. And so if it's going to be, a rainy game and we're going to have to take the air out of the ball and hand it off, I might favor Georgia in that one. But it's close. Again, you got Quinshon Judkins there. It's close.
Yeah, it's not a win game, though. It's a rain game, which means that benefits generally the offense and makes it harder to defend. So Georgia's defense could be a little bit less good, and Jordan Watkins and Dayton Wade and those guys make plays on the outside. That's what I mean by advantage Ole Miss, not necessarily like a 1960s style rain game where it's just 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
It depends too on how hard the rainfall is, right? If we're talking about a little sprinkle, then yeah, absolutely. Those guys on the outside, the passing game won't be affected that much. If we're talking a downpour for, a quarter, that might change things up and make it a cloud of dust type of game. So we'll see. We'll see how the rain affects the game. To me, I just think that it's difficult. The rain is an interesting factor for this point that I'm about to make. But we just watched Ole Miss last week, their defense, especially against Texas A&M and a backup quarterback. Now, Texas A&M has, explosive players on the outside, but they really haven't been able to utilize those guys most of the year. Texas A&M scored 35 points on Ole Miss. Now, one of those was a special teams touchdown, but also they had a chance to score another touchdown where Max Johnson threw an interception in the end zone. So seeing that A&M offense to me against that Ole Miss defense and the success that they were able to have, and knowing what Georgia has been able to do for much of the year, they had a bit of trouble against Missouri for a half. I just think that at the end of the day, Georgia probably has too much for Ole Miss. In my opinion, though, it's going to be a close game. I know that line is 10. I think that Ole Miss is going to cover that. But my gut tells me that Georgia wins because it's at night, because it's at home. And because they've just got more talent on the roster. Eventually they do the boa constrictor, which they did to Missouri last week, and win by something like 6.
Yeah, basically they put you under so much pressure that eventually you make a mistake, and that's what happened to Missouri. That's probably what's going to happen to Ole Miss.
Yep.
But this is probably, believe it or not, other than the Alabama game and the SEC championship game, which is likely going to happen, This is Georgia's test. You're going to get the Georgia Bulldogs' best shot. It's not going to be on the road at Tennessee because they know they can handle Tennessee. This Ole Miss game, they're thinking about, okay, how do we match up against that team? And it'll be interesting to see exactly what happens. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm doing my ultimate homer pick about Ole Miss 34, Georgia 31. But, hey, that's what it is. I'm a fanalist. So that's the way it works.
Don't blame me one bit.
Yeah. The CBS game this week is Tennessee at Missouri. Tennessee, I think, is a 1.5 favorite on FanDuel. It's on CBS. The Ole Miss Georgia game is not on CBS, which I think CBS and the SEC are basically divorced at this point already. They're just playing out the string. And I think the SEC said, we want this one and we want to give it to Disney. Pick this other game. You can either have Ole Miss and Georgia, or you either get Tennessee and Georgia. And I imagine the CBS crew wanted to go back up to Knoxville again. I mean, that's what happened. But the best game and the best conference, that is the ESPN game Saturday night in Athens. But Tennessee and Missouri, this is going to be a good football game. I think Luther Burden is doubtful for this game. And that is a big, big loss for Missouri, to the point where you can honestly see Missouri putting up a 8-4 after an 8-1 start or a 7-1 start.
Yeah, I picked Missouri 8-4 at the beginning of the year, and our friends who've been watching this show and our folks who read our previews over at biscuitssec.com know that I've been high on Missouri. 8-4 I thought was high on them anyway, and for the Drinkwitz era it is. They haven't broken 500 in the Drinkwitz era. So my pick, I guess, is still kind of on track, but I thought maybe they might even be able to break 8-4. But looking at the injury report, I am worried for sure. Theo Weiss is potentially out, as well as Luther Burden. Eli Drinkwitz said that he was most worried about Luther Burden playing this week. Brady Cook is even banged up. He's been banged up for many weeks. He's also listed as, I think, probable by Eli Drinkwitz. So before I saw that news, and I knew that Luther Burden was banged up against Georgia, but before I saw that he may not be playing, I was leaning towards Missouri for the fact that it was at home, how well this team has been playing, and then I thought they were kind of due for a win, and coming back off of a Georgia game where they gave Georgia a good run for their money through 3 quarters, but at the end of the day, the more I started thinking about it, I just think that Tennessee's run game is so difficult to stop. Mizzou lost Chad Bailey as well, a linebacker. He's not a huge contributor, but that does matter. They're losing depth on the linebacking front. So I just think it's going to be really difficult for Mizzou to stop that Tennessee running game. And then Tennessee's defense as well is pretty stout. Now, if you look at the games that they've played, though, to this point, Missouri's going to be the best offense that they face until Georgia next week. So on their schedule thus far, statistically, Missouri is the biggest test that they've faced thus far this season. So I'm interested to see what that matchup looks like. But at the end of the day, if Luther Burden's out, I really don't think that Mizzou's going to be able to pull this one out.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Mizzou is 7-3,
Mm-hmm.
and you have that game. And if Arkansas can beat Auburn this weekend in that game, that Arkansas has got their non-conference game, and they close out with Missouri with a chance to be bowl eligible. And that's not a good recipe for Missouri for the way that the season would end. I think whenever they're clicking on all cylinders, they're fine, but Georgia just did to Missouri what Georgia does to other teams, and they just beat you up. I mean, it's like what old Alabama used to be.
Yeah, it is. And I just looked up their schedule real quick. Yeah, of course, you got Tennessee this week, then you got Florida as well. And look, Florida's good. They're a tough out. They're looking like they may be headed towards a 5-7 season, or maybe 6-6 if they can beat Missouri. But at the end of the day, like it's not an easy game to go to beat Florida. So you've got Tennessee this week, Florida, and then Arkansas, like you said. 8-4 is looking very possible. But they could also end up finishing 10-2. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we move on from the rolling ball of butcher knives that is the Georgia Bulldogs. We talked about the Tennessee Missouri game. Now let's talk about the Bama Kentucky game. And Alabama, I've got to give them credit. They've kind of figured it out over the course of the season, although I do think that if they played a fully healthy Ole Miss game in this point of the season, which you can't do, it might be a completely different scenario. But Alabama is doing what they need to do, and they're going to go to the SEC championship game. I talked to the Georgia guys this week. I mean, I did crossovers all week with the Georgia guys, and they are all convinced that they are going to embarrass Alabama. And I do not know if that is possible. I don't know if Georgia is that good of a team that they could do that. But I like Bama in this Kentucky game. Kentucky is not as physical as they normally are. Devin Leary is not kind of what we thought he would be. Jalen Milroe's kind of figuring it out. He's turning into an athlete at quarterback, and they're doing that really, really well. I think Bama wins this game fairly easily.
I agree with you. I think they're going to go into the big grocery bag and steal all the groceries out of Lexington. like you said, or if they caught him early in the season, they may have a better shot. But even early in the season, like Kentucky just wasn't looking great. I mean, Bama's defense has been good all season long. So even if they caught him earlier in the season, with Devin Leary playing like he was, I don't know if they would have had a shot.
Not a lot you could
Even
do.
yeah, and so now late in the season, Jalen Milroe's coming into his own. They just came off a huge win against LSU. They've reeled off 7 straight wins, 8 straight wins, something like that now. I really don't give Kentucky a shot in this game. Frankly, I don't think that. I think they're going to turn over Devin Leary once or twice. Look, the thing on Kentucky is just shut down Ray Davis and make Devin Leary beat you. They've got some guys on the outside, but they haven't really been able to use them as they excuse me, as they would have liked to all season. For whatever reason, it hasn't clicked between Devin Leary and Liam Cohen. So I just don't see them being able to produce enough points to beat an Alabama team that has now found their way on offense more or less. And I don't think I think this Bama defense is going to have a great night against this Kentucky offense. I mean, last week Kentucky raced out, crushing Mississippi State. I think it was 17-3 or something like that at halftime. And then in the second half, I believe they only scored once. A field goal, or so maybe it was 24-3 and they scored, kicked a field goal or something like that. But I believe when I looked at it, they only kicked a field goal or scored 1 touchdown. And against that Mississippi State defense, I mean, that game should have been 42-3, 35-3, something like that. You would expect them to move the ball better. And they just haven't been able to do it. So if they're not going to be able to do that against the likes of Mississippi State and some of the other, inferior teams to Alabama that they've played on their schedule thus far this season, I don't see it happening.
Let's talk about some of the other games that are on the SEC calendar, like A&M and Mississippi State have a game this weekend. And you have Max Johnson, who has, the rumor is, broken ribs. And the rumor is also he is going to play. And if that is the case, I think even a broken rib Max Johnson probably means that A&M wins this game 31-3, 38-3. If there is no Max Johnson and third strings in the quarterback, then it gets weird because if Mississippi State knows they just have to stop the run game, I think they can do that. But I think Max Johnson's going to play, isn't he?
I think so. All signs are pointing to that. The that's the whispers from A&M insiders is that he's going to try and give it a go. I mean, any of us who watched the A&M Ole Miss game could see that he was really hurting at the end of that game. He was taking a lot of shots. He's the most pressured quarterback in FBS. I mean, he's been taking hits all year. He's been on his bottom more than anybody in the league and in the country, frankly. For whatever reason, A&M's offensive line has just not been able to figure it out. Give him a ton of credit. The kid has stuck in there, taken shots all season since he became the starter, and he continues to get up off the mat and come back and play. I mean, he played an awesome game against Ole Miss. He made a couple of mistakes, but you gotta get tip your hat to that kid and give him some respect because he's one tough son of a gun. But yeah, all signs are leading to him possibly playing this weekend. We'll see how effective he is. But the truth of the matter is he needs to play because if A&M has to go to their third string quarterback, he's a transfer from Fresno State. I don't even know, Jalen Henderson is his name. Don't know a ton about him, but a transfer from Fresno State is probably not going to cut it at a place like A&M or in the SEC. Probably can get a win against Mississippi State at the end of the day, but they need Max Johnson to play, and they need him for the next 3 games, really, at least for this one, and then LSU at the end of the year.
I think that if Jimbo had confidence that he could get the third stringer to get the win against Mississippi State, he would let that happen because you would have that one. You would have the Abilene Christian game to get right a little bit, and then the LSU game, he's good to go because that's going to be the game. That's going to be the test. We always make the joke about Texas 8-4, but they're literally trying to get to 8-4 right now. That is the goal. They want to go to the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Yeah, I would love to see Jimbo dunked in Duke's Mayo. It'd be great. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, look, the other part of this too is that the seat under Jimbo, they keep the A&M boosters and A&M fans, myself included, are raking coals under his seat to make it hotter by the day. So he needs to get wins, and he needs to get good wins. I mean, they should blow Mississippi State out. This team with the recruiting classes and the roster and all the talent at that, at A&M and College Station, they should blow this Mississippi State team out. So they need to do that. And I think Jimbo's feeling that pressure, which is kind of why I think we're hearing, one, Max is a tough son of a gun, like I said, but two, Jimbo's feeling that pressure. So I think he wants to get a win and get a win badly and, kind of stomp Mississippi State at home while he can.
Yeah, if the Texas A&M team that played Ole Miss shows up against Mississippi State, they win that game by 5 touchdowns.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah, it's going to take them all of a sudden, honestly, hitting the quit button whenever they react negatively to that blocked field goal at the end. That's what it would take to do that. Now, I guess Auburn and Arkansas, what do you see in this game? This is a game that I think Arkansas is probably going to win. And
sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Hugh Freeze is liable to get into his bag a little bit, but Hugh Freeze does not do well in Fayetteville. He traditionally, his only win in Fayetteville was with Liberty. He's going to go out there in a conference game, and I guess it's going to be 62 and sunny or something like that. But Arkansas has kind of gotten back to some of the Kendall Briles stuff, and the offense surprisingly looks a little bit better.
Yeah, it does. I think Arkansas has figured it out. I mean, getting a win in the swamp is hard no matter what. This Florida team is not the best Florida team we've ever seen, but like we said earlier, it's a good team. They're a tough out, and Florida walked into the swamp and got a win in overtime, and the offense all of a sudden woke up. I mean, I was looking at their average points per game, over the 3 games prior to the Florida game, and it was unbelievably anemic. Especially for as many weapons as that Arkansas offense has, and KJ Jefferson, behind center. So I think they've started to figure it out, right the ship. This Auburn offense is still, frankly, pretty anemic. They still can't really throw the ball with Peyton Thorne. Jarquez Hunter's tough to stop. So that's really going to be what Arkansas has to do. They got to make sure that guy doesn't go off for 185 yards and 2 TDs. But at the end of the day, yeah, I like this Arkansas team. I think that I heard somebody say it earlier this week that, or last week, I guess it was, that they were the best 2-6 team, in America. And I would fully agree with that. I think if you put them in, part of the Big Ten, they're probably in the top half of the Big Ten and in the top 25. I mean, this is not really a bad team. They were bad with Dan Enos. But no, I like this Arkansas team. I like them to get a win at home. And also too, like, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think most fans around the SEC and around the country, you got to love Sam Pittman. Like, I don't want to see that guy get fired. I think he's a great fit at Arkansas. I love his transparency too in press conferences. We see coaches so much just give coach speak all the time, and Sam Pittman's he's just a guy who will tell it how it is and give you an honest answer. So I want to see him get a win, and I think they'll get a win this weekend.
Yeah. The other games, I guess you have South Carolina and Vandy in the Jefferson Pilot game of the week. There's not a lot going on in that one. So what's the major storylines that you're going to have your eyes on this weekend, even outside the footprint? What are you going to be looking at?
Man, I guess it's still the Michigan stuff going on. There's something new every single day. We're such SEC homers, man. I don't look too much outside of it until I get to Saturday, and then I see where game day is for the most part. So I don't even know what the big games are, but there is one more in the conference that, LSU, Florida.
There it is. I knew I forgot about one.
There's one more. Yeah. But I think with that one, I think it might be a little bit more interesting if that one was in the swamp. But the fact that it's in Death Valley at night, it looks like Jaden Daniels is going to play. Currently listed as probable. That could be some head games, no pun intended, because he suffered what seems like a concussion. But if he plays, I look for this one to again be kind of a shootout. I mean, LSU's defense can't stop anybody at this point. And Florida's had success this year on offense against multiple SEC teams. So I think that Florida will have a good day on offense. I think they'll probably score somewhere in the 30s. But at the end of the day, if Jay Daniels plays, and potentially even if it's Nussmeier, I think this LSU team just has way too much offensive firepower for Florida to be able to stop them. I have a feeling this one's something like 45 to 31 LSU.
Yeah, it's going to be a big weekend of football. If Ole Miss can pull off their upset over Georgia, then it gets really interesting. And I'm not talking about the SEC championship game. I'm talking more along the lines of the top 10 and how that could shake out as well. So this is a big game for the Ole Miss Rebels, and playing in a game like that is pretty important. Alabama, take care of Kentucky. You complete. You get the West. If Georgia takes care of Ole Miss, I think they're probably going to get the West at that point. And so we'll see exactly what happens in those games. But anyway, for Boss Man Slim, I am Stephen Willis. Thank you very much. This has been the Biscuits and SEC Week 11 football preview. Tune in next week. Next Thursday, we will be live streaming again with the Week 12 preview, so I can tell you all about Ole Miss and Louisiana Monroe. Seriously, that's a game that's happening. So, Alex, man, take care, buddy, and thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephen.